My name is Jonathan Carter. I'm 41 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. A solid career in investment banking that paid enough for our four-bedroom house in one of Denver's most sought-after neighborhoods. A circle of friends who respected me. And Emma, my wife of 12 years, who I believed was as committed to our marriage as I was. I was wrong, dead wrong. It's funny how your entire life can change with one careless mistake. In Emma's case, it was forgetting to take her phone with her into the shower. We had a rule about phones at home: no passwords, no secrets. It wasn't because we didn't trust each other. At least, that's what I told myself. It was just practical, in case of emergencies. The text notification lit up her screen while it sat on our marble kitchen counter. Room 317, same as last time. Can't wait. The sender, Vincent Larson. Even if you've never been to Denver, you've probably heard the name. His family's real estate development company had transformed the city skyline over the last decade. Their logo was plastered on half the construction sites downtown. Vincent himself was a fixture at every high society event, always with his elegant wife Claire by his side. Claire, I'd met her several times at charity functions. Soft-spoken, intelligent, with sad eyes that never quite matched her perfect smile. Now I understood why. I put the phone down exactly as I'd found it and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. My hands didn't shake. My breathing remained steady. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. When Emma emerged from the shower wrapped in her towel, hair dripping, I was sitting at our kitchen island, reviewing work documents as if nothing had happened. "What time is the Morgan portfolio review tomorrow?" I asked casually. 10:30, she said, checking her phone. I watched her face, looking for any reaction to the message. There was nothing. She was good at this. Better than I would have expected. "I might be home late tonight," she added. "The gala committee meeting might run long." I nodded. "No problem. I'll grab dinner with Tom." That was the first lie I'd ever told her. I had no plans with Tom. Instead, I drove downtown and parked across from the company where Emma worked as an event coordinator. At 6:45 p.m., she emerged looking polished and professional in her blazer and pencil skirt. She didn't head toward the parking garage where her car was. Instead, she walked 3 blocks and entered the lobby of the Warwick Hotel. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to storm into that hotel, take the elevator to the 3rd floor, and kick down the door to room 317. But that would have been giving in to emotion. And if there's one thing I'd learned in my years as an investment banker, it's that emotion is the enemy of strategy. Instead, I started the car and drove to Brady's, a dive bar near our old apartment where Emma and I used to go when we were first married. The bartender, Mike, was still there, hair grayer but smile the same. "Jonathan Carter," he said as I slid onto a stool. "Been a while." "Too long," I agreed. "Bourbon, neat." He poured me a generous glass. "Celebrating something?" I took a long swallow, feeling the burn down my throat. "The opposite." Mike nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'd been tending bar for 30 years. He'd seen it all. "Want to talk about it?" "Not yet," I said. "Maybe after another one of these." 3 drinks later, I made a call to Barry Hoffman, an ex-cop turned private investigator who owed me a favor from when I'd helped restructure his brother's failing business. "I need surveillance," I said when he answered. "Discreet, thorough, and immediate." "Who's the target?" Barry asked. "My wife," I replied, my voice betraying no emotion. "And Vincent Larson." Barry whistled low. "The Vincent Larson? Jesus, John. Can you do it?" "Yeah, I can do it, but are you sure you want to know?" I watched as the evening lights of Denver flickered on, casting shadows across my dashboard. "I already know, Barry. What I need is proof." For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I was Jonathan Carter, devoted husband and successful investment banker. I smiled at my wife over breakfast, kissed her goodbye, and asked about her day over dinner. At night, while she claimed to be working late or meeting friends, I received updates from Barry. The hardest part wasn't the deception, it was maintaining normalcy. Watching Emma get dressed in the morning, knowing those clothes would end up on Vincent Larson's hotel room floor. Listening to her talk about work challenges, knowing she was leaving out the most significant parts of her day. Lying next to her in bed, wondering if she was thinking of him. One night, as we were getting ready for a dinner with my colleagues, Emma came out of our walk-in closet wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before. New? I asked, adjusting my tie in the mirror. This? No, I've had it for ages, she lied smoothly. Just haven't worn it in a while. I knew for a fact that Vincent had bought her that dress. Barry had photographed them shopping together at Neiman Marcus 2 weeks earlier. I'd seen the receipt. You look beautiful, I told her, and meant it. That was the cruelest part. I still found her attractive, still felt the pull of our history together. 12 years is a long time to love someone. You're staring, Emma said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Just appreciating the view, I replied, forcing a smile. Ready to go. At dinner, Emma charmed my colleagues as she always did. She remembered details about their spouses, their children, their hobbies, asked thoughtful questions, laughed at the right moments. Meanwhile, I kept thinking about the photos Barry had sent me that afternoon. Emma and Vincent in a passionate embrace in the elevator of the Brown Palace Hotel, his hand possessively on her hip, her fingers in his hair. Jonathan, are you with us? My boss, Richard, was looking at me expectantly. Sorry, I said, snapping back to the present, miles away. I was asking about the Peterson account. They still wavering on that municipal bond package? I launched into shop talk, grateful for the distraction. Emma touched my arm, a gesture of solidarity that once would have felt comforting, but now seemed hollow. After dinner, as we drove home in silence, Emma reached over and placed her hand on my thigh. You were quiet tonight, she observed. Everything okay? Just tired, I lied. Big presentation tomorrow. She nodded, accepting the explanation without question. Want to take a bath together when we get home? I could give you a massage. The thought of her hands on me, hands that had been on him, made my skin crawl, but I couldn't let on. Rain check? I really should review my notes for tomorrow. A flicker of relief crossed her face. Of course, I understand. I bet you do, I thought. You understand perfectly. The evidence piled up quickly. Photos of them entering and exiting various hotels, timestamps that corresponded with Emma's work events, credit card statements showing room service charges for 2 at the Warwick, the Brown Palace, the Four Seasons. 7 months of this had been going on right under my nose, but Barry found something else, something that changed my entire approach. Vincent Larson is in trouble, he told me one night as we sat in his cluttered office. Deep trouble. What kind of trouble? Barry slid a folder across his desk. Financial. His company has been using investor funds to cover massive losses. They've been falsifying reports, moving money between accounts to hide the shortfalls. Classic Ponzi scheme stuff, but on a scale that would make Madoff proud. I flipped through the documents, my mind processing the implications. How did you get this? Barry shrugged. I have a contact at the SEC who owes me. They're building a case, but these investigations take time. Meanwhile, Larson is still collecting investments and living large. While sleeping with my wife, I added. While sleeping with your wife, Barry confirmed. So what are you going to do? I closed the folder and looked up. I'm going to get creative. That night, as Emma slept beside me, I lay awake planning. The pieces were coming together in my mind. Vincent Larson had taken something from me. Now I would take everything from him. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. As soon as Emma left for her office, I began my research. Vincent Larson's company, his investments, his public appearances, his wife Claire, his daily routines. I needed to understand my enemy before I could destroy him. My first step was to find Claire Larson. Not difficult, as it turned out. She volunteered at the Denver Art Museum every Wednesday afternoon, leading tours for school groups. I waited until she finished, then approached her in the museum cafe. Mrs. Larson, I'm Jonathan Carter. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Yes, Emma's husband. We've met at the Children's Hospital benefit, I believe. May I join you? She hesitated, then gestured to the chair opposite her. Of course. Up close, Claire Larson was even more striking than I remembered. Early 40s like her husband, but with a natural elegance that made her seem timeless. No obvious cosmetic work, unlike many women in her social circle. Her eyes were clear blue and shrewd. I'll be direct, Mrs. Larson. I have something important to discuss with you. Something personal. She stirred her tea slowly. I'm listening. I placed a manila envelope on the table between us. Before you open this, I want you to know that I struggled with whether to show you these. But ultimately, I believe you deserve the truth. Her hand hovered over the envelope. What kind of truth? The kind that changes everything. She opened the envelope with steady hands. Inside were 5 photographs. The first showed Vincent and Emma entering the work together. The second captured them kissing in the elevator, his hand possessively on her hip. The others were equally damning. Claire studied each photograph methodically, her expression never changing. When she finished, she arranged them in a neat stack and returned them to the envelope. 7 months, I said quietly. That's how long it's been going on. A single tear slid down her cheek, which she quickly wiped away. I've known something was wrong. Vincent has been distant, secretive about his phone, working late. She gave a bitter laugh. I guess he wasn't working after all. There's more, I said, and slid the second envelope across the table. This one contained Barry's financial findings. As she reviewed them, her composure finally cracked. Oh my God, she whispered. He's going to prison. Yes, I confirmed. It's just a matter of time. Claire looked up at me, her eyes suddenly sharp. Why are you showing me this? Why not just divorce your wife and let Vincent get caught in his own mess? I leaned forward. Because that's not enough. They betrayed us, humiliated us, and thought we were too stupid to notice. I don't want to just end my marriage. I want them to face what they've done, publicly. What are you suggesting? The annual Denver Charity Gala is in 3 weeks. Emma is coordinating it, and Vincent is being honored as the top donor. Claire's eyes narrowed as she began to understand. And you want to, what, create a scene? I want to expose them, Mrs. Larson, to everyone who matters in this city, and I want to do it with you by my side. She was silent for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. My friends call me Claire, she finally said, and if we're going to destroy my husband together, I think we should be on a first-name basis. I smiled. Claire it is. We left the museum together, both of us changed by what had transpired. In the parking lot, Claire turned to me. How are you so calm about all this? She asked. If I were you, I'd be falling apart. I thought about it for a moment. I'm not calm inside, but I learned long ago that showing weakness doesn't help you win. And that's what this is to you? A game to win? No, I said firmly. This is about justice. She studied my face, then nodded. I'll call you tomorrow. We have a lot to plan. That night, Emma came home late, smelling of unfamiliar cologne. She claimed she'd been stuck in a meeting with a perfume vendor for an upcoming event. I pretended to believe her, even as rage boiled beneath my skin. We ate takeout in front of the TV, an old routine that now felt like a cruel parody. Emma chatted about her day, carefully editing out the parts spent with Vincent. I nodded in all the right places, laughed at her stories, while mentally cataloging each lie. After dinner, she disappeared into our home office to catch up on emails. I knew she was texting Vincent. Barry had shown me their exchanges. Explicit, passionate messages that made me question everything I thought I knew about my wife. I poured myself another bourbon and stepped out onto our back deck. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. I remembered bringing Emma here when we first bought the house, both of us giddy with excitement about our future. We talked about children, growing old together, building something lasting. What a joke that seemed now. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. I'm in. Let's talk tomorrow. For the next 3 weeks, Claire and I met regularly to plan. We were careful, coffee shops in different parts of town, never the same place twice. We used burner phones to communicate. It may have been excessive, but we couldn't risk Vincent or Emma discovering what we were up to. During this time, I learned more about Claire Larson than I ever expected to. She was smarter than her husband, for one thing. She'd given up a promising career as an environmental attorney to support his ambitions. They had no children. Vincent had never wanted them, and now she was grateful for that small mercy. How did you and Emma meet? She asked me during one of our planning sessions. College. She was studying communications. I was in finance. We were at the same party, started talking, and that was it. I smiled at the memory, then felt the familiar stab of betrayal. What about you and Vincent? My father introduced us. He thought Vincent was exactly what I needed. Ambitious, charming, connected. My father was very big on connections. And was he? What you needed? Claire's smile was sad. For a while, maybe, or I convinced myself he was. She straightened her shoulders. But that's over now. One afternoon, as we were finalizing details at a small cafe in Cherry Creek, Claire suddenly froze, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. Don't turn around, she whispered. Emma just walked in. My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. Alone? Yes, she's at the counter ordering. Follow my lead, I said, and reached across the table to take Claire's hand just as Emma turned from the counter. I heard her sharp intake of breath, felt her presence behind me before she spoke. Jonathan? I turned, feigning surprise. Emma, what are you doing here? Her eyes darted between me and Claire, confusion and suspicion battling on her face. I had a meeting nearby. She looked pointedly at our joined hands. I didn't realize you two were friends. Claire and I ran into each other, I said smoothly. We got to talking about the gala. She has some great ideas for the presentation. Claire smiled, perfectly composed. Emma, so good to see you. Your husband has been telling me how proud he is of your work on the event. Emma's professional mask slipped into place, but not before I glimpsed the panic beneath. How nice. Jonathan doesn't usually take such an interest in my fundraisers. People change, I said, my eyes locked with hers, sometimes in surprising ways. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Well, I should get back to the office. Nice seeing you both. She hurried out, forgetting the coffee she'd ordered. I turned back to Claire, who released my hand with a shaky laugh. That was close, she murmured. Actually, I said, it was perfect. Now they'll be worried, off balance, wondering what we know. Do you think she'll tell Vincent? Immediately, I confirmed, and he'll tell her it's nothing, that we couldn't possibly know about them. But they'll both be scared. That night, Emma came home earlier than usual. She was overly attentive, suggesting we open a bottle of wine, asking about my day with unusual interest. I played along, enjoying the irony. When she initiated sex for the first time in months, I made an excuse about an early meeting. The hurt in her eyes gave me a grim satisfaction. The next day, Barry called with news. Larson's panicking, he reported. He's liquidating assets, moving money offshore. My SEC contact says they're accelerating their investigation. Can you get me the details? I asked. Oh, I want to know exactly what he's doing. Already on it, but there's something else. Larson made a large withdrawal yesterday, $50,000 or cash. That's not his usual style. I frowned. What's he planning? Not sure, but I've got a guy watching him. I'll let you know if he makes any unusual moves. 2 days later, I found out what the money was for. I was leaving my office when a man approached me in the parking garage, tall, broad-shouldered, with the dead eyes of someone who solved problems for cash. Mr. Carter, he said, blocking my path to my car. I tensed, ready for a confrontation. Who's asking? Name's Reeves. I work for Vincent Larson. He didn't offer a hand to shake. Mr. Larson would like to have a conversation with you. Tell him to call my secretary for an appointment, I replied, attempting to step around him. Reeves moved to block me again. This isn't the kind of conversation that happens in an office. Mr. Larson values his privacy. As do I said coolly. So you can tell your boss that if he wants to talk, he can do it through proper channels. Reeves's expression hardened. Mr. Larson is a generous man. He's prepared to make it worth your while to be discreet about certain matters. So that's what the $50,000 was for, a bribe, or the opening offer of one. I'm not interested in Mr. Larson's generosity, I said. Now, if you'll excuse me. I moved a step around him again, but this time Reeves put a hand on my chest, pushing me back. I don't think you understand the situation, he said, his voice dropping to a menacing rumble. Mr. Larson isn't asking. I looked pointedly at his hand until he removed it. Actually, I understand perfectly. Your boss is sleeping with my wife and running a Ponzi scheme. Now he's sent you to intimidate me because he's afraid I will expose him. Reeves blinked, momentarily thrown off script. Let me be clear, I continued. If anything happens to me, if I so much as slip in the shower, the SEC, the Denver PD, and every major news outlet in Colorado will receive detailed evidence of Vincent Larson's financial fraud. So you can go back to your boss and tell him that he can't buy me and he can't scare me." Reeves's expression shifted, calculation replacing intimidation. "You know, you could make a lot of money with that information. Mr. Larson would be very appreciative." "I already have money," I said. "What I want is justice." I walked past him to my car. He didn't try to stop me again, but I could feel his eyes on my back all the way out of the garage. That night, I called Claire and told her what had happened. "My God, Jonathan," she said, clearly shaken. "Vincent sent someone to threaten you? This is getting dangerous." "It was always dangerous," I pointed out. "We're dealing with a desperate man who is about to lose everything. Maybe we should back off. Let the authorities handle it." "The authorities will handle the financial crimes," I agreed, "but they won't punish him for what he did to us. That's our job." There was silence on the line then. "What if he tries to hurt you? Or me?" "He won't," I assured her. "Vincent is a coward at heart. He preys on people he thinks are weaker than him. Now that he knows we're not intimidated, he'll back down." I was right. The next morning, Emma informed me that Vincent had called an emergency board meeting and wouldn't be able to attend the final gala planning session. "He seemed distracted," she said, watching me carefully over her coffee cup. "Is everything okay with his company? Have you heard anything?" "Why would I have heard anything about Vincent Larson's company?" I asked innocently. Emma flushed. "I just thought since you're in finance, Denver's a small world." "Not that small," I said, "but if you're concerned, why don't you ask him yourself?" She looked away. "I'm sure it's nothing." As the gala approached, we refined our plan. The event was being held at the Denver Art Museum, in the new wing that, ironically, the Larson family had helped fund. 800 of Denver's elite would be there, including numerous investors in Vincent's company. The key element was the multimedia presentation. As the honoree, Vincent would be introduced with a video highlighting his philanthropic contributions. Claire, as a museum board member, had access to the presentation and arranged for our modified version to be substituted. But we needed more, something that would ensure Vincent couldn't wiggle out of the situation, couldn't use his charm and connections to minimize the damage. "We need the SEC there," I told Claire during our final planning meeting, "and the police. We need to make sure he faces legal consequences, not just social embarrassment." "How do we do that without tipping them off in advance?" I smiled. "We give them an anonymous tip, timed to coincide with our presentation." The night before the gala, I confronted Emma for the first time. "Working late again tomorrow?" I asked as we prepared for bed. "You know I am. The gala is our biggest fundraiser of the year." She was applying her night cream, focused on her reflection. "Room 317 at the Warwick must have quite a view." Her hands froze mid-motion. In the mirror, I watched her expression shift from confusion to shock to calculation. "What are you talking about?" she attempted, but her voice wavered. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't make it worse by lying more than you already have." She turned to face me, her features composed into what I now recognized as her negotiation face. The same expression she used when trying to get a vendor to lower their price. "Jonathan, I think we should talk about this calmly." 7 months, Emma, with Vincent Larson. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" "It's not what you think," she began, but I cut her off with a laugh. "That's literally the most cliché response you could have chosen." "What is it then? Business meetings that require room service and tangled sheets?" Her facade cracked. "Fine, yes, Vincent and I have been seeing each other. It happened gradually. We were working on the children's hospital fundraiser together, spending late nights planning, and things developed." "Things developed," I repeated flatly. "That's how you describe betraying your marriage vows? Things developed?" "I was going to tell you," she insisted. "After the gala, Vincent and I have been talking about our future. He's going to leave Claire." I had to turn away to hide my smile. "Is that what he told you?" "Yes, and I believe him." "He loves me, Jonathan." "And what about his financial problems? Did he mention those?" Her expression faltered. "What financial problems?" "Vincent Larson is broke, Emma. Worse than broke. He's been running a Ponzi scheme with his investors' money. He's about to lose everything, including his freedom." "That's a lie," she said, but I could see the doubt creeping in. Vincent's company is extremely successful. It was. Now it's a house of cards about to collapse. I walk to the door of our bedroom. Enjoy the gala tomorrow. I hear it's going to be quite memorable. I spent that night in our guest room, listening to Emma pace and make phone calls in hushed, urgent tones. Around 2 a.m., I heard the front door open and close. Curious, I went to the window and watched Emma get into her car and drive away. I immediately called Barry. Emma just left the house. Can you follow her? 20 minutes later, he called back. She went to Larson's penthouse. Looks like they're having a late-night strategy session. Keep watching, I instructed. I want to know what time she comes home. It was nearly dawn when Emma returned, looking exhausted and tense. I pretended to be asleep as she crept into the guest room. Jonathan, she whispered. When I didn't respond, she sighed and left, closing the door softly behind her. By morning, she had composed herself again, greeting me with forced normalcy as if our conversation had never happened. You're not wearing your tuxedo, she observed as I came downstairs in jeans and a sweater. Aren't you coming to the gala? Oh, I'll be there, I assured her. Us not with you. Her smile faltered. What does that mean? It means I have my own plans for tonight. Fear flickered in her eyes. Jonathan, whatever you're thinking of doing. Have a good day, Emma, I said, cutting her off. Break a leg tonight. I spent the day finalizing details with Barry and Claire. By 5 p.m., everything was in place. Barry's SEC contact had agreed to have agents standing by. The Denver police had been anonymously informed about potential criminal activity at the gala. The altered presentation had been loaded onto the museum system. There was no going back now. The Denver Charity Gala was the social event of the season. As I pulled up to the valet station in my Audi, I could see the red carpet entrance, the photographers, the women in designer gowns, and men in custom tuxedos air-kissing each other with practiced insincerity. Claire was waiting for me 2 blocks away, as planned. When I saw her, I nearly didn't recognize her. Gone was the tasteful, understated look she usually favored. Tonight, she wore a daring red gown with a plunging neckline, her blonde hair styled in loose waves, her makeup dramatic and flawless. You look different, I said as she slid into my passenger seat. Tonight isn't about being tasteful, she replied. It's about being noticed. And noticed we were. As we walked arm in arm up the red carpet, I could see people doing double takes, whispering behind their hands. Claire Larson with Jonathan Carter? Where was Vincent? Where was Emma? Inside the museum's grand hall, champagne was flowing, and Denver's elite were mingling beneath the modern art installations. I spotted Emma immediately, stunning in a black gown, clipboard in hand as she directed the catering staff. When she saw us, she froze mid-sentence. Across the room, Vincent was holding court with a group of older men, investors, I assumed. He hadn't noticed us yet. Claire squeezed my arm. Ready? She whispered. Absolutely. We made our way through the crowd, accepting champagne flutes from a passing waiter. People parted for us, conversations stuttering as we passed. I could feel Emma's eyes boring into my back, but didn't turn around. Vincent spotted us when we were about 10 feet away. His expression cycled rapidly through confusion, shock, and then forced joviality. Claire, there you are, he called out too loudly. I was wondering where you disappeared to. His eyes flicked to me, then back to his wife. And Jonathan Carter, what a surprise. Vincent, Claire replied coolly. I thought I'd arrive with someone whose company I genuinely enjoy for a change. The men around Vincent shifted uncomfortably. One muttered an excuse and drifted away. I see you're in one of your moods tonight, Vincent said with a tight smile. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Oh, I don't think so, Claire responded. I'm tired of privacy, aren't you? All those private hotel rooms, private bank accounts, private conversations. Let's be public for once. Vincent's jaw tightened. I could almost see the calculations happening behind his eyes. How much did she know? What was I doing here? How could he salvage this situation? Ladies and gentlemen, announced a voice over the sound system, if you could please make your way to your tables, dinner will be served shortly, followed by our program honoring tonight's special guest, Mr. Vincent Larson. Vincent gave us a curt nod. Excuse me, I should find my seat. Oh, we'll see you there, Claire assured him with a predatory smile. We've arranged to be at the head table with you." I'd never seen a man's face drain of color so quickly. As we took our seats at the head table, the tension was thick enough to cut with the butter knives laid out before us. Vincent sat at the center, with the museum director on his right. Claire boldly took the seat on his left, which had been intended for Emma, who was now scrambling to have another place setting added. I sat beside Claire, with Emma ultimately seated across from us, her face a mask of professional poise, betrayed only by her white-knuckled grip on her wineglass. Dinner was a masterclass in passive-aggressive warfare. Claire made a point of being charming to everyone except Vincent, lavishing particular attention on me. I played along, touching her arm when she made a joke, leaning in close to whisper comments that made her laugh. Vincent grew increasingly agitated, downing 3 scotches in rapid succession. Emma maintained her composure, though I caught her exchanging worried glances with Vincent. Once, when Claire excused herself to the ladies' room, Emma leaned across the table. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "Having dinner?" I replied innocently. "The salmon is excellent." "This is humiliating." "Is it? How interesting that you'd use that particular word." Emma's eyes narrowed. "I know you're angry, Jonathan, but this isn't the place." "On the contrary," I said, lowering my voice, "this is exactly the place. In front of all your society friends. In front of all of Vincent's investors." Her face paled. "What are you planning?" "Just wait," I advised. "The best part is coming up." When Claire returned, Emma tried a different approach. "Claire," she said with forced friendliness, "that's a stunning dress. Is it new?" "Yes, actually," Claire replied, smoothing the red fabric. "I decided it was time for a change. New beginnings and all that." Emma's smile froze. "New beginnings?" Claire hummed noncommittally, taking a sip of her wine. "Life is full of surprises, isn't it?" Vincent, who had been deep in conversation with the museum director, suddenly turned to us. "What are you two talking about?" he demanded, his words slightly slurred. "New beginnings," Claire repeated pleasantly. "Changes on the horizon?" Vincent's eyes darted to me, then back to his wife. "Claire, I think you've had enough wine." "On the contrary," she replied, "I think I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in years." The museum director, sensing the tension, tried to change the subject. "Vincent, I was just telling the mayor about your generous donation to the children's wing. Perhaps you'd like to share what inspired you." Vincent launched into a rehearsed speech about community responsibility and the importance of the arts, but his eyes kept drifting to Claire and me. I smiled blandly back at him, the picture of innocence. When the museum director stood to begin the program, Vincent had the hunted look of a man who knew something was coming, but couldn't escape. Claire reached under the table and squeezed my hand. The moment had arrived. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce tonight's honoree. Vincent Larson has been a pillar of our community, a generous supporter of the arts, and a visionary businessman who has quite literally changed the face of our beloved city. Please enjoy this short presentation highlighting his contributions." The lights dimmed and the large screen behind the stage illuminated. For the first 30 seconds, everything proceeded as expected. Professional footage of Vincent at groundbreaking ceremonies, presenting oversized checks to various charities, standing proudly before Larson development properties. Then the video changed. "What I've learned in business," Vincent's voice narrated over a slideshow that was most definitely not part of the original presentation, "is that perception is everything." The screen showed Vincent and Emma entering the Warwick Hotel, timestamped 3 weeks earlier. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Emma dropped her wine glass, sending red liquid cascading across the white tablecloth. "The public sees what we want them to see," Vincent's voice continued smoothly, clearly taken from some business interview. "Behind every success story is careful management of information." Now the screen displayed financial documents, bank transfers, falsified reports, evidence of the massive fraud that Vincent had been perpetrating. Numbers were highlighted, revealing the millions of dollars missing from investor accounts. Vincent lunged to his feet. "Turn it off!" he shouted. This is fabricated. A smear campaign." But the presentation continued relentlessly. More photos of Vincent and Emma together. More financial evidence. The crowd was in an uproar now, investors shouting questions. society wives whispering furiously behind their hands. The museum director was frantically signaling to the tech booth, but we had paid the technician well to ignore any attempts to stop the video before it finished. As the final damning images faded from the screen, I stood and raised my champagne glass. "I'd like to propose a toast," I announced, my voice carrying across the now hushed room. "To truth and to consequences." The massive doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A team of SEC agents and Denver police officers strode purposefully down the center aisle. The lead agent, a stern woman in a dark suit, approached our table. "Vincent Larson," she said, though it wasn't really a question. "This is outrageous," Vincent blustered, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Whatever you think I've done, Mr. Larson, I'm Special Agent Meredith Keaton with the Securities and Exchange Commission. You're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and investment advisor fraud." She nodded to one of the officers, who stepped forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Phones were out, recording everything. Investors surged forward, shouting questions and accusations. Emma was crying, mascara streaming down her face as she clutched at my sleeve. "Jonathan, please," she begged. "Tell me you didn't do this. Tell me you didn't arrange all of this." I gently removed her hand. "You made your choice, Emma. You chose him, his lifestyle, his lies. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice." "But I love you," she insisted, desperation making her voice crack. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through this. 12 years, Jonathan. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Perhaps for the first time in years. The woman I had married was somewhere inside this stranger, but I could no longer see her. "It meant everything to me," I said quietly. "That's why this had to happen." As Vincent was led away in handcuffs, shouting about his lawyers and threatening everyone in sight, Claire appeared at my side. She slipped her arm through mine, a gesture that felt surprisingly natural. "Shall we go?" she suggested. "I think our work here is done." We left the gala amid the continuing chaos, neither of us looking back. Outside, the night air was cool against my face. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. No more pretending. No more lies. "What now?" Claire asked as we walked to my car. "Now we wait for the fallout," I said, "and enjoy the show." The fallout was swift and merciless. The Denver Post might not have been able to print the more salacious details of the scandal, but social media had no such constraints. By morning, everyone in Denver knew that Vincent Larson had been arrested for massive financial fraud, while his wife had shown up at the gala with the husband of Vincent's mistress. Emma tried calling me dozens of times over the next few days. I didn't answer. Eventually, she sent a text. "I'm staying at the Crawford Hotel. I've given you space, but we need to talk. Please." I agreed to meet her in the hotel restaurant. She looked terrible, pale with dark circles under her eyes that her makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Have you filed for divorce yet?" she asked after the waiter had taken our orders. "My lawyer is drawing up the papers," I confirmed. "You'll be served next week." She nodded as if she'd expected this. "And will you be pursuing the infidelity angle?" "That depends on how amicable you're willing to be. Colorado is a no-fault state, but judges still consider conduct in property divisions. If you fight me, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened." "I won't fight you," she said quietly. "I made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life." 7 months isn't a mistake, Emma. It's a campaign." She flinched. "Vincent was persuasive. He made me feel special, desired. He talked about leaving Claire, about us having a future together. While he was stealing from his investors and living on borrowed time," I added. "Did you know about his financial crimes?" "No," she protested. "How could you think that? I had no idea until you told me the night before the gala." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. I'd been married to this woman for 12 years, but now I questioned whether I'd ever really known her. "What will you do now?" I asked. "I've lost my job," she admitted. "The museum board felt I'd brought too much negative attention to their organization. I've got an interview at the Oxford Hotel next week, assistant events manager." She gave a bitter laugh. "Several steps down, but I have to start somewhere." Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Emma had built her career methodically over a decade. Now she was nearly starting over. "What about you?" she asked. "I've heard rumors." "About what?" "About you and Claire Larson." I shrugged. "People will talk. Let them." "So there's nothing going on between you two? It was just for show, to humiliate Vincent and me?" "Claire and I have become friends," I said carefully. "We've both been through a traumatic experience. We understand each other." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I really have lost you, haven't I?" I signaled for the check without answering. Some questions don't deserve a response. Outside the restaurant, as we prepared to go our separate ways, Emma touched my arm one last time. "I am sorry, Jonathan. Truly, I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know." I looked at her, this woman I had once planned to grow old with. "I believe you are sorry," I said finally, "but not because you hurt me. You're sorry because you bet on the wrong man and lost everything." She didn't deny it. She couldn't. Vincent's legal troubles multiplied in the weeks following his arrest. The investigation revealed that he had defrauded investors of over $75 million, using the money to maintain his lavish lifestyle and prop up failing developments. Former business associates rushed to distance themselves, some even suggesting they had suspected something was amiss all along. When I ran into Claire at our lawyer's office building, her divorce proceedings were moving forward alongside mine, she told me Vincent had tried to blame her for his crimes. He actually told investigators I was the one who handled the company finances, she said with disbelief as we shared coffee afterward. As if I had access to any of it. He kept me completely in the dark. "Will that complicate things for you?" I asked. She shook her head. "They've already confirmed I had no involvement, but it shows how desperate he is. He'd throw anyone under the bus to save himself." "Including Emma?" Claire's expression softened slightly. "I heard she's working at a hotel now, the Oxford?" "That's what she told me." "Do you ever regret what we did, the public exposure?" I considered the question. "No, they deserved it, both of them." "I agree about Vincent," Claire said, "but sometimes I wonder if we went too far with Emma. She was wrong, absolutely, but Vincent was the predator. He had a pattern of this behavior." "What do you mean?" Claire stirred her coffee. "Since all this happened, 3 other women have contacted me. Former assistants, an interior designer he worked with. He pursued them all the same way he pursued Emma. Lavish compliments, promises, hotel rooms. And you didn't know?" "I suspected something," she admitted, "but I never had proof. And when I questioned him, he was so convincing, made me feel like I was being paranoid." She shook her head. "Classic gaslighting. I should have recognized it, but when you're in it, you don't see the patterns," I finished for her. Our eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. The weeks turned into months. Vincent's case wound its way through the legal system, each new revelation more damning than the last. He'd been running his scheme for years, it turned out, long before he ever met Emma. She had just been his latest conquest. Another ego boost for a man who collected people the way others collected art. Meanwhile, Claire and I continued our friendship, meeting for coffee or dinner a few times a week. We were careful not to rush into anything, both of us still healing from the betrayals we'd experienced. But there was an undeniable connection between us, a shared understanding that didn't need explanation. One night, about 4 months after the gala, Claire invited me to her new apartment. She'd moved out of the penthouse she'd shared with Vincent, opting instead for a modest but elegant condo in a quieter part of town. "I want to show you something," she said, leading me to a small second bedroom she'd converted into an office. On the desk was a stack of papers. "I'm starting a foundation." I picked up the proposal. "The Denver Truth Project?" She nodded, excitement lighting her face. "It's going to provide legal aid to victims of financial fraud. People who've lost their savings to scammers like Vincent, but can't afford to fight back." "This is impressive," I said, flipping through the detailed business plan. "You've really thought this through." "I needed a purpose," she explained. "After everything that happened, I couldn't just go back to being a society wife with a different husband. I needed to do something meaningful." I looked at her with new appreciation. "You're remarkable, you know that?" She blushed, looking away. I'm just trying to make something good come out of all the bad. On impulse, I stepped forward and kissed her. She stiffened in surprise, then melted against me, her arms sliding around my neck. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I've wanted to do that for weeks, I admitted. What took you so long? She asked with a smile. 6 months after the gala, Vincent Larson pleaded guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $75 million in restitution, money that had long since been spent. His sentencing made national news, with the judge specifically citing the breathtaking arrogance with which Larson had violated his investors' trust. By then, my divorce from Emma was final. I kept the house but gave her a fair settlement, enough for her to start over, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. The last I heard, she and John, a year, she had moved to Phoenix to be closer to her sister. Claire and I continued our relationship, which gradually deepened into something neither of us had expected to find again. We were cautious, both still healing from betrayal, but there was an undeniable connection between us. We understood each other in ways that didn't need explanation. On the anniversary of the gala, Claire launched her new foundation, the Denver Truth Project, providing legal aid to victims of financial fraud. She had found her purpose in helping others who had been deceived as she had been. I was there for the opening ceremony, proud of how she had transformed her pain into something meaningful. I couldn't have done this without you, she told me that night over dinner. A year ago, I was a shell of myself, living in denial about my marriage, about who Vincent really was. You would have figured it out eventually, I said. You're too smart not to have. Maybe, but it might have been too late. She reached across the table and took my hand. You showed me what courage looks like, Jonathan. Facing the truth, no matter how painful. We showed each other, I corrected her. Later that night, as we stood on the balcony of her new downtown condo, looking out at the Denver skyline, a skyline that no longer featured any buildings with the Larson name, Claire leaned against my shoulder. Do you think we'll ever fully trust again? She asked. After everything? I thought about Vincent, sitting in his prison cell, about Emma, starting over in a new city, about the pieces of ourselves that had been broken and the new strength we'd found in the aftermath. I think we already do, I said, and turned to kiss her under the vast Colorado sky. Some people say that revenge is a dish best served cold, but they're wrong. The best revenge isn't cold at all. It's the heat of truth, burning away lies. It's standing tall when others expected you to crumble. It's finding strength you never knew you had. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's finding someone who understands exactly what you've been through and who's ready to walk with you into whatever comes next.